Hey everyone! In this video I would like to talk about racism and white privilege. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to read for you what the definition of white privilege is. White privilege is a term for societal privileges that benefit white people in Western countries beyond what is commonly experienced by non-white people under the same social, political, or economic circumstances. From my understanding of that, if I'm understanding this definition correctly, what that would mean then is that white people have benefits and privileges that people of color do not have in that same society. I may be able to get to a certain place in life because of the fact that I'm white. Now, some people find that really offensive. I don't find that offensive. In a society where institutionalized racism exists, those who are not the brunt of racism are obviously going to do better than those who are the brunt of that racism. So that's what white privilege is. I'm not going to discuss whether white privilege actually exists, because I think that's a waste of time right now. I'm just going to go off the assumption that it does exist for the sake of this video. Now, the problem I have, not with white privilege, but with how it's commonly understood or how people understand white privilege, is they say, oh, white people are then benefiting from racism. And this is something I challenged recently, an idea I challenged recently on a Facebook post that somebody had posted, I don't know, some article about white privilege, and that was an idea that I found to be so prevalent throughout that piece, was that racism is benefiting white people. And that's not what white privilege means in and of itself. You may look at the definition of white privilege and say, well, then that means that white people are benefiting from racism. Okay, so I want to explain how this actually works. In order to establish whether racism exists, we need to see what it would look like if racism didn't exist. I'm just going to talk about science real quickly here. If we want to see what the effects of a specific chemical, we'll call it chemical A, in water is, we need to set up an experiment where we have just a regular thing of water. This is called your control group. So these are both beakers of water. In order to understand the effects of chemical A on water, we need to know what water by itself looks like. Then when we add chemical A and we see effect A, B, and C, we can say that the effects of chemical A on water are A, B, and C. Because when water is by itself, it doesn't have those things. Same thing with racism. If we want to know what the effects of racism are on white people as a whole, we need to know what it would be like for white people in a society in that same society where racism didn't exist. It's called a control group. This is the control group. Okay, so in this control group, there is no racism. And in this one, there is racism. Remember, these two things have to be identical in every way except for the fact that one of them has racism and one of them doesn't have racism. So this is the control group. This is the, I don't know what it's called, but this is the group with racism. So if we see that in this control group, white people are doing just as good or better than they were in this group, we cannot say that racism was benefiting white people. That's pretty logical. That's just how science works. My argument is actually that racism doesn't benefit white people. I challenge that idea. The reason I think that white people don't benefit from racism is because in a society where racism exists, certain members of that society are stopped from flourishing and adding benefits to society. A person of color that is on the constantly receiving end of racism, if we assume that they're going to have a harder time producing at full capacity, they aren't going to be able to give as much, be as fully functioning as everyone else. And that's actually bad for society. That's what I'm saying. If certain members of any society are stopped from producing at full capacity, that doesn't benefit the other people in that society. I'm saying it harms them. People say, well, it benefits them because then they don't have as much competition. Well, that's not how things work, right? That's not necessarily how the economy works. Competition is actually good in certain aspects, right? It's good for an economy. And what I'm saying is that if these people down here, these are the people of color, down here, when they're at the bottom because they're being oppressed, let's say by certain members of white society, are allowed to do their best, that benefits all the people up here. Because they become entrepreneurs, they become intellectual thinkers, they become the Albert Einsteins, they become the Steve Jobs, or the Bill Gates. They create jobs, they create opportunity. That drives an economy and everyone benefits from it. If somebody flourishes by doing what is moral and what is legal, everyone benefits from that. Everyone benefits from that. And that's kind of what I'm going on. We're going to do better if we allow these people to flourish. That is my argument. And that's why I say that white people don't benefit from racism. Because key members of our society are stopped from adding to society. They're stopped from adding what they could be. They could be adding so much more, but they can't because racism exists. Now, one last thing I want to talk about is how some people understand this. Instead of looking at a control group, what they do is they look just at this. And they say, well, white people are benefiting from racism because compared to people of color in that society, they're doing better. Therefore, and racism's here, therefore it must be racism that's making them do better. Yes, I mean, in a it's not making them do better. It's making these people do worse. That's what's happening. They're doing worse than they normally would. We can't compare different ethnicities to each other within that society. We have to compare them to themselves in a control group. I hope that all makes sense. I'm sure some people are going to call me racist or whatever for saying what I've said. That's their choice. But yeah, there we have it.